So we're at the point, we're on page Kuf Tes in the mitzvah of Minu Melech, and the Tzemach Tzedek is now discussing a Gemara and I believe a Medrash about and a Zohar about David HaMelech, because King David, as I said yesterday, he is the Davidic dynasty, kingship. Melech in Chazal is David HaMelech, not Shaul HaMelech, not even Shlomo HaMelech. And I explained that at length yesterday. So, one place it says that David HaMelech, everyone, you probably all know this, David HaMelech wasn't supposed to live. He's called a Bar Nafla, where Nafel means falling, to fall. It also means a miscarriage, a Nafel, Bar Nafla. He is a son of a Nafla, or he is a Nafla, meaning he wasn't supposed to live at all. When Adam Arishan, who saw every single neshama and every single for the future that's going to come to the world, he saw this and he saw that David HaMelech is supposed to be the Melech Yisrael. He said, how are we going to accomplish that he's a Melech Yisrael, but yet he's not supposed to come into the world? So he took 70 years of his own life. He was supposed to live Adam Arishan 1,000 years, and he gave away 70 to David HaMelech. That's a known concept, and there are verses and midrashim about this, and a lot of sermons. It's a very interesting idea. That's one thing. Then we have a piece of Zohar, Parshas Vayishlach, which says that the same thing, David HaMelech wasn't supposed to be here. Came along Avram and gave him 5 years of his life. Avram was supposed to live 180 years, Moshe. The Torah says, how long did Avram live? When did he pass away? At the age of 175. What happened to those other 5 years? He donated them to David HaMelech. Then it says, Yaakov was supposed to live 147 years. He minus 8 years, 28 years, and he gave him over to David HaMelech. And so Yosef was supposed to live 110 years, and he gave away 7 years to David HaMelech. If you add up all those numbers, you get. I might be mixing up the years because, Anyway. You add them up, you get 70. So the Tzemach Tzedek's question is, if Adam gave him 70, why did Avram, Yaakov, and Yosef have to give him another 70? Obviously, he needed another 70. If he needed another 70, he should have lived not 70 years, but 140 years. There are other questions here that Tzemach Tzedek doesn't mention that you could ask, but we're going to just stay to the text. That's where we're at. So on page Kuf Tes, we're 6 lines from the top, the last word on the line, which says V'ho'inyan. V'ho'inyan ki Adam Berishin, because Adam, first man, who p'chinas chochmi lo datzilus, is what we call, he's at the level of supernal wisdom of the world of Atzilus, which is the first of the 4 worlds, the highest world. Let me read the Kabbalah, and then we'll explain it, try to explain it more down to earth. The Rambam brings, and others, Hashem is a Chakim, he's smart, but you cannot know God with Chokhmah. If someone will say, I'm only going to apply Chokhmah, and if I use my Chokhmah, my wisdom, I'm going to understand God, this saying says you got it all wrong. He also has the virtue of Chokhmah. But Hashem is not Chokhmah. Don't limit God to Chokhmah. What you should say is that whatever the virtue of Chokhmah is, as well as other virtues, he has that as well. This means to say, She'eina be'erech v'sug liyas v'mena Chokhmah yediyah b'biyah. There is Chokhmah of Atzilus. The world of Atzilus, Chevre, is the highest world. What does that mean? It means it's the plateau of godly consciousness. You hear that? It's where consciousness of God rules, not consciousness of humanity. When you go to the world of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya, the three lower worlds, that's where humanity begins, its consciousness begins. So when we say that Adam is Chochma Datzilas, Chochma Dile'ela Datzilas, we mean that Adam Arishon was the personification of God consciousness. Okay? Is that clear? God consciousness means you're not thinking about, what your bodily needs are and how to survive. You're all about Hashem. In other words, everything is God. That's your orientation. Yes, Moshe.
Sorry. Where are we? Because I can't find this. I don't know.
Are you using the sefer, the big sefer?
The just all Hebrew.
Yeah. Okay, so you're on page Kuf Tes?
Yeah.
Count now about 8 lines down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 line down, in middle of the line. First, you see the line begins with the word Be'erech?
Yeah.
Okay. Go now to the word, after the word Biyah. Biyah, it's an acronym. That's where we're at. Eich. You got the word Eich?
Okay. Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you.
Good, welcome. Eich liyes hanogas nevroyim, the consciousness of Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, of those worlds, is how Hashem is saying, Hashem is thinking, how should I conduct creation? But the consciousness of Atzilus, where Adam is from, Chochmah Atzilus, that's God consciousness. And he's not thinking about practically Moshe should be in Bet Shemesh and I should be in Brooklyn. That's already lower. It's still Hashem. No question about it. But it's the way Hashem already takes into consideration the world. The interest is the world. The interest is a consciousness that's also outside of God, if you can use those terms. Again, it sounds like an oxymoron. If you're God, how can it be outside of God? We mean to say it's the way Hashem thinks about things outside in the world that he wants as well. But then there is divine consciousness, that whatever my entire perspective is, one thing and one thing only. Is this godly or not? Is God here or not? That's the motive, that's the way you think. It's very practical. Two people are working, and two people are making money, and two people are doing whatever they're doing. But by one, the interest is Hashem, and by other one, the interest is the money that comes from Hashem. The story that I told you was with the famous chassid, Chaim Moshe Alperovich. There is a mashpi, I think, in Kiryat Gat, in one of the yeshivas, or Migdal, one of the yeshivas, Moshe, maybe your son learned in the yeshiva there. His name is Zusha Alperovich, Rabbi Zusha Alperovich.
Kiryat Gat.
Yeah, Kiryat Gat. He's a very knowledgeable chassidus, whatever. So he had a grandfather named Chaim Moshe. Chaim Moshe learned in Lubavitch, in the city of Lubavitch, so he's considered a Tomim. Anyone that studied in the Lubavitch yeshiva, we call them a Tomim, because the name of the Lubavitch yeshivas is Tomchei Tamimim. The plural of Tomim is Tamimim. So he learned, but the original ones, the ones who studied in Lubavitch, they were the kind of authentic Tamimim. They were the real McCoy, because they studied in the original Lubavitch. Okay? When he came to Eretz Yisrael in 1935 and then into the 40s, the country was, or maybe later, even after the state was founded, sometime in that period, money was scarce, poverty was rampant, and everything else. And to make parnasa, at that time, I think he lived in Yerushalayim, I believe. He went down to Eilat, to the Yam HaMelech area. They were building. They were with sand and dunes and I don't know exactly what, but there was that was one of the areas I understand that they used to start building the country. And his job was to schlep these sacks into the truck, something like that. The other Yidden around, they saw this Yid. They didn't know who he is, but they saw he had a full beard. and he had a long rekel, a long, kapota. And they saw that, and they asked him, and he told them he's a Lubavitcher Chassid, he comes from the Chabad Yeshiva, and they said to themselves, this is so disrespectful that he has to do this. We are worksmen. You know what I'm saying? We're not B'nai Yeshiva. We're not Torah. Who knows if they were religious, but even they were simple people. But he comes from, this pedigree, and so I heard this several times from different people. They came down, I guess the owners, the managers came down from Yam HaMelech. They came into the Balatanya Shul in Meir Sharem, right? In the shuk over there, that whole area. And they said, does Reb Chaim Moshe Alperovich Dalfin here? They said, yeah, and they pointed it. And he saw them. They saw him, and they went over to him, and they said to Reb Chaim Moshe, we have good news for you. The good news is that no longer will you have to schlep the packages and the boxes. We're appointing you as a manager. All you have to do is tell others what to do and where to put them, but you yourself don't have to do that. It's backbreaking. It's not for you. It's a menial job, on and on. And he told them, thank you very much, but I don't want that job. I want to keep my job. I heard that when they told him this, the 2-3 people that came to give him this news, they were devastated. Devastated sense is are you normal? We're giving you a job, a managerial job, where you don't have to schlep anymore, and you turn us down. It's like they were beside themselves, but there was no negotiating here. That's what he said. They left the Balatanya Shul, and he continued doing his job during the week of schlepping. So somehow, someone asked him, who heard about this, and said, Reb Chaim Moshe, why did you turn them down? It's not logical. He said, it is logical. I'll tell you why. Because when I schlep the boxes and this, I think Mishnayos Baal Peh by heart, Tanya Baal Peh, Chassidus, Torah Baal Peh. I have the calmness. I'm by myself, and I'm able to do that. If I have to manage other people, I won't be able to do that because I'm going to constantly be in their world, not in my world. It's a great story. I believe it's a great story, Moshe. But it brings out, I believe, this Nakuda here. There is God consciousness and there's human consciousness. Both are good. But the difference between the two is night and day. It's not only a matter of gradation. It's a complete different category. By Chaim Moshe Alperovich, his entire consciousness was Torah, Chassidus, reviewing Baal Peh as he works, which is, by the way, in the Hayoim Yoim. The Frierdiker Rebbe says it in several places, I believe, in Hayoim Yoim, the importance of saying words of Torah as you walk in the street, on Nachal Mamor, and on this street, wherever you live, Chevra, to say words of Torah, to think words of Torah, if you don't, right? So that was his orientation. But Poel Moshe, he worked in schlepping boxes, in the sand, in the dunes, with all the schmutz and everything else. He did that. But what was he think? Where was he? What was he all about? Reviewing Mishnayos, reviewing Tanya. That might be an example where the Tzemach Tzedek is making the difference between the consciousness of Atzilus versus the consciousness of B'riya Yitzira Asiyah. Let's continue. Next line. David bar Nafla. And therefore, going back to the statement that David was a bar Nafla, he shouldn't be here, he was an Eiffel. Ki shoyrish P'nez David hu P'nez Dvar Avaya V'ruach Piva Machaya Kol Ha'olam Ha'is. David HaMelech is not like Odom Rishon. David HaMelech's soul and his orientation and consciousness is a melech, the world. In other words, in my example, David HaMelech would take the job as a manager versus schlepping the boxes. Because in order to build Eretz Yisrael, you need a good manager. You need good workers too, but if you don't have a manager who tells you go here, go there, do this, do that, there's going to be chaos. And boy, do we know about that. So that's why David HaMelech is a nafla. He wasn't supposed to be here. Right? We'll see in a second. Since we say that David HaMelech is the level of Malchus, which is also the idea of Dibur, speech. Speech is incorporated in Chochmah. When we access wisdom, but in our brain, in our intelligence, what happens to the words that later articulate that Chochmah? Where do words come from? The words to articulate an idea begin in the idea. It begins in the idea. But the way the words are in the idea, they're subservient to the idea. They're submerged by the idea. So the words are not felt. Since David HaMelech was a Bar Nafla, since he was Malchus, which is Dibur, speech, he was submerged in the higher power. So therefore, he wouldn't exist if not for Adam Arishan. If not for Adam giving 70 years, he wouldn't come out into the world. Because his level of Dibur is submerged in Chochmah. And Hashem created the world with Adam Arishan, which is Chochmah. So from the perspective of Chochmah, Dibur, it's not that it's insignificant, but it's submerged. So if there's no Dibur, if there's no talking, which that's the level of David, Malchus, kingship, do this, do that, if that doesn't exist, you don't exist. Hence, you're a nafel. You're a miscarriage. That's what he's saying over here. Let's continue. Derech Mashal. He gives now a mashal. When a person is immersed in the depth of an idea, he can't speak at a time. And to impact someone else. Moshe, let's take your field. Art, one of your fields. Safras. Let's take art. When you're doing art, drawing, painting, and you're immersed in the idea, everything else should be non-existent. So it's as though you don't hear the phone. Maybe physically you hear it. I mean, there would be a level where you don't even hear it, but that's... Or the famous story, how about the famous story of Chaim Zev with the Mozhitzer Rebbe, Rabbi Taub, which the Rebbe said at Farbrengen. This was, I think, in Europe in the 30s. He needed a serious operation, and they wanted to give him whatever the equivalent of anesthesia is, or he said, I don't need it. I'm going to sing a niggin, I'm going to compose a niggin. And he composed, Mozhitz made very long nigunim with many stanzas. And he didn't feel the pain. I can't understand it, how that's possible. Although I must tell you that having my cataract operation just a few weeks ago, they did it without anesthesia. And I say differently. Sorry. They didn't do it with the conventional anesthesia they normally do, which is you're like alert and not alert. They didn't do it for whatever reason. I don't want to say why now, but they didn't do it. What they did is, as I'm laying there, he's working on me, the nurse was dropping anesthetic drops into my eyes. So it's not I didn't have any anesthetic, but conventional I didn't have. I'm just thinking out loud that when a person is immersed, in other words, I didn't compose a niggin, I'm not at that level. But the Mozhitzer Rebbe, he composed the niggin, and he was in the niggin, so he didn't feel the pain. So, at our level, Moshe, it is possible that when we're truly immersed, whether it be in the fields that we do, you could reach a experience where the phone, your wife speaking to you, you're not there. You're simply not there. That's what he says. That when a person is tarot, look at the words, Chaim Zev, tarot. When a person is occupied, Bi'amkus chochmasoi, with the depth of his wisdom. Totally, Moshe is totally engrossed in an idea. Ein yochol, he cannot ledaber. You can't speak then. Sometimes someone says, like, why aren't you speaking? You know why I'm not speaking? Because I'm elsewhere. Unfortunately today, in other words, a distraction, I would say that this is a virtue to distractions, but you have to have the right distractions. If you're distracted by the right idea and the right topic, then, so we say distractions in a sense, it's like a negative. Why are you distracted? But there's a positivity to distraction too. And that is that you're distracted because you're totally immersed in an intellectual idea that you're thinking about, be it in Torah or even otherwise. So when someone talks to you, you're not there. You know, it happens. I'm sure it happens to each and every one of us. Your wife, your kids, or somebody's talking to you and you're elsewhere. You're like a space cadet. Where are you? I'm talking to you. Oh, you're not here. Where are you? I'm thinking about something else. So Tzemach Tzedek says, this is the mashal, the analogy for Dibur, which is David, who was submerged in Chochmah, and hence there was no room for David, hence he would have not been born. Let's continue. Since the source of David's soul is from supernal speech, he was a bar nafla, he wouldn't be born, a stillborn or a miscarriage. Because he was incorporated and included in Adam Arishan, first man, which is Chochmi, law supernal wisdom, and for David HaMelech to emerge from his concealed state in Adam. It required this emanation, the illumination of the crown, the Keser, which is higher than Chochmah, to impact Chochmah. When Keser adds additional energy, illumination, to Chochmah, it can't tolerate it anymore, and it must spurt out, it must come out in speech. Derech Mashal, and he uses the analogy for this as well. A person who all of a sudden is bombarded in his mind with other intellectual ideas that he didn't think about before, whether they come through divine prophecy or similar, he can't control himself, to hold it all in, and he must reveal to his friends a little bit. He'll benefit and he'll have peace and calmness. What a mashal. What a mashal. You know, this mashal is Menashe. If you're studying something, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, whether it's divine prophecy or whatever reason, ideas enter your mind about this that are overwhelming, you're forced to speak it out to your wife, to your client, to your friend, even to yourself. You can't hold it anymore. You can't beseivel it. You can't tolerate it. Tzemach Tzedek says that's what Keser is. Keser's impact on Chochmah is, because Keser is the crown, that it throws into you this fantastic, overwhelming energy, causing you to have to speak, i.e., causing David HaMelech to be born. What an interpretation to this Chazal that David HaMelech wasn't supposed to live in, and Adam gave him 70 years. Says that Tzemach Tzedek, you know what he means? He gave him 7 years. Hashem bestowed into Adam something that Adam didn't have on his own, which is Keser, forcing Adam to spit it out. Through who? Through David HaMelech. Hence, David HaMelech is born years later. You won't find this explanation anywhere. It's a very, very unique explanation. And if you break it down, which is important to break it down as well. What does that mean practically? Like, Moshe always wants to know practically, what do I do with all this, And he's right, because the Rebbe said everything has to have a b'chein. So Moshe, you're on the tracks of the Rebbe, because you're his chassid. I'm serious. Every Farbrengen, the Rebbe will talk about Torah, Gemara, Halacha, Chassidus, Kabbalah, and then he said, what's the b'chein? What's the bottom line? So what's the bottom line here? We're not Adam, we're not David. The bottom line is that when you, at times, and there are times in our lives, when we get a flash of intuition or a flash of something greater, and it's like so powerful, don't seek to hold it in. Share it with others. And Tzemach Tzedek says here, V'yarviach, look at his words towards Yarviach v'yanuach loi. You will benefit and you have peacefulness and calmness. In other words, Moshe, before you don't have that peaceful and calmness. I assume it's in Europe too, but in my work in writing, when I have ideas, if I don't, I put them in writing, right? So for me, writing would be like the flash that makes it come out, because I have it here in my brain. It comes into my brain, ideas here, there, right? I'm not at peace until it comes into writing. It just happened a few days ago. Someone sent, I think I sent you the article about this woman, Ethel Pappenheim, who married Schneer Zalman Dubin, Mordechai Dubin, who was the Latvian parliament Lubavitcher Chassid, who was the one who really was behind the previous Rebbe getting out of Russia. It's not that too, but his life being spared. He was a very powerful man. Mordechai Dubin, you can look him up online. His son marries this Yekka, Ethel Pappenheim. I sent you this article. If you didn't read it, I think I did. If not, I'm going to send it to you. You have to read it. It was written by Leah Scholler. I believe I spoke to her, and fascinating. And correspondence between the previous Rebbe and this Yekka girl in the 1930s, 33, 34, 35, and she becomes a Lubavitcher, marries a Lubavitcher Chassid. She's a Yekka. He's the son of a Lubavitcher Chassid and Lubavitcher himself. And then she starts teaching, doing what the Frierdiker Rebbe wants, in Germany, about Taras HaMashpocha and Torah, Chassidus, Mamish, like you could say the first Lubavitcher Shlucha, really. So why am I saying that? So I've had someone proofread a book I'm coming out with called Chabad and Yekes. Chabad and Yekes. So Baruch Hashem, today it was finished and went to the printer. It was going to the printer after, right? When I read this, I got this article a week ago from a friend. I'm blown away. You see, I'm still like. So a new thing came to my head that didn't come from me, right? So I'm saying now, I have to get this into this book, but my manuscript is finished. And so I said to the proofreader, put it in when you find, as a reference. So he writes back, he says, you do it, I can't take that responsibility. So I found a place, I added it to a certain footnote. What I'm saying is, and now I feel much calmer. I feel that the document, the manuscript, is more b'shleimut, it's more whole. You understand? This is a similar idea to what we're learning. But here he's teaching it up in Kabbalah and Chassidus. If you break it down, Moshe, you're drawing, you have ideas, and at times, it's only when you put those final touches out on the painting, and exactly. And those are from things that maybe you didn't plan on doing when you sat down to make this beautiful piece of art. You had an idea, but all of a sudden other ideas came to you, and you say, I got to get it in there. But how? The creative mind. Creative mind is what it's created to this particular idea. Now another idea comes to me that I realize is unbelievable, gewaldig. So that's where you get the peace. When you're able to culminate the painting, including the new idea that they had, which only enhances the painting. And that's why he says, V'yarviach, you're going to make profit. That's revacha, profit, meaning literally, you're going to have a better product, you'll make better sales. right? A better book, a better piece of art. And more importantly, v'yanuach loi, you will come to tranquility. So it's true, Menashe, not just for art and writing, it's in every field. I remember, as a bacher in yeshiva with learning, Talmud and the Mefarshim, a lot of work, a lot of effort. But when you get it clear, you incorporate new ideas that you learn as they come to you, and then you're able to put them in the right setting, both in your mind and how you express it, and you express it to a chavrusa. Okay? The Rebbe told my father, I think I told you this, but I'm repeating it. This was already in the 1980s. My father wrote to the Rebbe, and he said he makes like hachlotas, resolutions to learn this more Torah to make this year and to try, and it doesn't last. He starts a week, 2, and whatever, month, whatever. The Rebbe answered him 3 or 4 words. Limud bechavrusa, studying with a chavrusa, Yosef will add bikiyum halimud, in the sustaining of that Torah subject that you decided to learn and made hachlata about. Limud bechavrusa. We underestimate, myself included, the value of a chavrusa. A chavrusa is a bouncing board. And many times a chavrusa keeps you honest. When you start with your shtick, when you start with our shtick, a real chavrusa, a real friend says, hey guy, come on, get over it. And you talk about it. So you take a maimer like this, Tzemach Tzedek, and you bring it down to your life, it is so practical, so real. Everyone should have a good rest of the fast, like I wrote to you. And more importantly, Mashiach still can come today, should come today, and we have the Binyan Beis Hamikdash. Emir Hashem, have a great Shabbos, and we'll see everyone on Monday. Shabbos, thank you. Sei gesund, enjoy, take care. Bye-bye.